The great hall of the Stellar Council stretched high above, filled with soft blue light from floating crystals. Leaders from many star systems sat in curved rows, each representing their proud civilizations. They spoke in calm voices, but their words carried great weight. The topic of the day was Earth, a small world that most of them barely cared about. "They call themselves humans," said Elder Varen of the Tar Dominion. His voice was steady, almost bored. "Mortals of a fragile planet. They live short lives, and they waste much of their time in conflict among themselves. Why should we consider them important?" Several council members nodded. For centuries, the Stellar Council had studied new species and measured their strength. Long life was often seen as the key to wisdom. Some members lived for centuries, and others for millennia. To them, a creature that lived less than 100 years seemed small and harmless. But one voice rose above the calm agreement. It belonged to Luran, a younger observer from a distant system. Luran's people had been part of the council for only a few generations, so he did not have much influence. Still, he spoke with honesty. "I have studied the humans," Luran said. "They are not like other short-lived species. They build quickly. They recover quickly. They take risks that others fear. I believe we must be careful." The room grew quiet for a moment. A few leaders glanced at one another. Elder Varen let out a low sound that was close to laughter. "Careful of mortals who barely reach a century in age? You are too cautious, Luran. They are restless, yes, but weak. They will break if we press them." "They may bend," Luran replied softly, "but they rise again. I have read their records. They faced disasters on their own planet, yet they always found ways to continue. Their lives may be short, but their spirit is strong." Another leader, Elder Saren of the Vial, leaned forward. His long silver eyes narrowed. "Young observer, you let your studies cloud your judgment. Spirit means little in the great scales of the stars. Technology and order decide power, not passion." The chamber filled with murmurs. The council had little patience for warnings about minor species. To them, Earth was only a small world circling a modest star. Humans had no fleets, no great weapons, and no advanced shields. The council believed that one small show of power would be enough to bring them under control. Luran tried again. "Forgive me, elders, but I must insist. If we underestimate them, we may regret it. They learn fast. They adapt in ways that seem impossible. Already, they reach for the stars with their first machines. Should we not guide them carefully rather than force them?" The elders shook their heads. Elder Varen raised his voice, making the decision sound final. "The council does not waste time with fear of mortals. If they resist, we will correct them. If they obey, they will serve as a minor world in our order. That is all." The crystal lights shifted, signaling the end of the discussion. Luran lowered his eyes, but inside he felt a growing unease. He knew the elders saw only weakness in humans. What he saw was different. He saw determination. Far away on Earth, the sky was calm and the world went on as usual. People worked, traveled, and dreamed. Yet strange signals were already touching the edges of their networks. Satellites blinked with sudden errors. Communication lines carried faint interruptions. Few noticed at first, but some scientists began to wonder. Something unnatural was moving in the space beyond their world. In one observatory, an old scientist named Arun studied the strange patterns with quiet focus. His students gathered around him as he traced the disruptions. "This is not noise," he explained. "This is design. Something is watching." The students exchanged uneasy looks. Arun continued, "We must share this with the others. The world must know that we are not alone." News spread slowly at first. Reports appeared about unusual signals and errors in space equipment. Some dismissed them as simple faults. Others whispered that something greater was near. Humanity stood at the edge of discovery, not knowing what waited beyond the stars. Back in the Stellar Council, the decision was already made. The elders would send envoys to Earth. They expected humans to bow and obey. The council believed this would be simple. But Luren could not shake his worry. As he walked out of the great hall, he thought of the humans who looked at the stars with wonder. He thought of their quick hands, their bright eyes, their restless drive. He feared that the elders had made a mistake, one that would echo across the galaxy. For the first time in many cycles, Luren felt a strange emotion that did not belong in the calm order of the council. It was not anger and it was not fear. It was something closer to respect, a respect for mortals who refused to remain small. The morning sun rose over the city of Delhi, casting golden light on tall buildings and busy streets. People hurried to their work as usual, unaware that this day would be remembered for centuries. Above the blue sky, hidden just beyond human sight, a vessel waited. It was smooth, silver, and shaped like a crescent moon. Inside were the envoys of the Stellar Council, ready to make their first contact with Earth. They had prepared their words carefully. To them, humans were mortals of a minor world. They believed one clear display of authority would bring instant obedience. The envoys were calm, convinced this meeting would be brief. At noon, a sudden shimmer filled the sky above the city. People stopped in the streets as the silver vessel slowly revealed itself. Children pointed upward. Phones and cameras rose quickly. Across the world, television screens and networks filled with images of the ship. It was the moment humanity had always imagined but never expected to see so suddenly. Inside the government building, leaders of Earth gathered. Some were nervous, others excited, but all understood the weight of the moment. A door of light opened in the air, and 3 envoys stepped forward. They were tall, with pale features and eyes that glowed faintly. Their robes shimmered with colors that shifted like water. They moved with quiet confidence, as if they had already won. One of them, Elder Envoy Saren, spoke in a voice that carried easily across the hall. His language was unknown, yet somehow every human understood. "People of Earth," he said, "we come from the Stellar Council. We bring you order, knowledge, and protection. In return, you must accept our guidance. You will follow our rules, and your world will be placed under council care." The hall grew silent. The envoys stood tall, expecting cheers of acceptance. They thought the humans would bow. Instead, the human leaders exchanged calm glances. The first to speak was a woman named Hannah, who represented a large union of nations. Her voice was steady. "We thank you for revealing yourselves. We have always wondered if others live among the stars. Now we have our answer. But we will not give up our freedom. If you come in friendship, we welcome you. If you come in control, we must refuse." The envoys paused. This was not the reaction they had predicted. Saren raised a long hand and said, "You misunderstand. This is not a choice. You are mortals with short lives. Your kind cannot survive alone in the vast galaxy. You must be guided." Hannah did not flinch. She looked directly at him. "We may be mortal, but our lives are ours to live. We will learn, we will grow, and we will walk among the stars in our own way." The second envoy, pale-eyed Lyra, tilted her head in disbelief. "Your courage is misplaced. If you resist, you will only harm yourselves." The human leader answered simply, "We have always faced challenges. We have always risen again. Do not mistake our short lives for weakness." Across the hall, quiet whispers rose among the human officials. They were not afraid. Some even felt a quiet pride that their representatives stood firm. The envoys, however, saw this as arrogance. They believed humans were too bold for their own good. In their minds, a demonstration of power would end this debate. The meeting ended with no agreement. The envoys stepped back into their door of light and vanished, returning to their ship. The humans were left in silence, but their hearts were steady. For the first time in history, all nations faced the same truth: they were not alone, and their place in the stars would not be given freely. That night, the silver vessel remained in orbit. From above, the envoys reported back to the Stellar Council. Saren's voice carried a hint of annoyance. The mortals refuse. They believe they can stand apart. They must be shown the truth. The council elders listened with little concern. To them, this was expected. Elder Varen said, "Show them. A brief correction will bend their pride. Then they will obey." Far below, on Earth, scientists and engineers studied every signal the ship released. They traced the patterns, searching for weaknesses. They shared knowledge across borders in a way never seen before. It was not fear that guided them, but determination. If the envoys believed humanity would surrender, they were wrong. In a quiet laboratory, Arun, the old scientist, looked at a screen glowing with alien signals. His students leaned close. Arun spoke slowly. "They think we are fragile. They think we are blind. But already we see. Already we learn. This is only the beginning." The students nodded with bright eyes. Across the world, the same feeling spread. Humans argued and disagreed as they always had, but under the surface, a new bond was forming. For the first time, all of humanity shared a single challenge. And in that challenge, they found unity. The envoys rested in their ship, certain that their next move would be simple. They did not see the quiet fire that had begun to burn in mortal hearts. They did not understand that refusal was not weakness, but strength. The first meeting was over, and the first mistake had been made. The days after the first meeting were filled with endless talk across Earth. News channels replayed the images of the silver ship, the glowing envoys, and the brave words spoken by Hannah. Some people were afraid, but many felt something different. They felt a quiet pride that their leaders had not bowed. For the first time in history, the whole planet was watching the same moment and sharing the same question: what happens next? In the capital cities of many nations, leaders held emergency meetings. Scientists, soldiers, and engineers sat together, something that rarely happened before. Old arguments were put aside because everyone knew the truth now. Humanity was not only a small world anymore. They were part of a larger galaxy, and the galaxy did not see them as equals. Hannah stood before a group of representatives. Her voice was calm but firm. "We cannot face them with fear. They expect us to break. But we will stand together. We will share knowledge. We will build faster than we ever have. If we are mortal, then let us show them what mortals can do." The room filled with nods. In the past, unity was always fragile, often broken by disagreement. But now there was no choice. The challenge was too great. Humanity had to be one voice. In small towns and great cities, the same spirit began to grow. People repaired old machines and shared their skills freely. Engineers exchanged designs across borders. Scientists from rival countries suddenly worked side by side. Students joined projects with enthusiasm. Families donated their time to efforts that promised to strengthen their world. The feeling spread like a spark in dry grass. Humanity was alive with purpose. In a quiet workshop in Kenya, a group of young inventors studied fragments of disrupted signals left by the envoy's ship. They had no alien devices, but they used creativity. "Look at this pattern," one of them said. "It repeats in ways that feel rigid. If their systems are like this, then they cannot adjust quickly. That is our chance." In Japan, engineers met in a simple hall, discussing energy sources. "Their power is vast," one said, "but their control is narrow. We do not need to match them in strength. We only need to find where they do not bend." Meanwhile, Arun, the old scientist, continued his work. His small observatory became crowded with students and volunteers. He watched their bright faces as they worked late into the night. They think short life is weakness, he told them. But short life is a gift. It makes us move fast. It makes us dream quickly. We do not have centuries to wait. We act now. The Stellar Council, however, saw none of this. From their great hall, they received only the envoy reports. To them, humans were restless but harmless. Elder Varen said, "The mortals resist, but their unity will not last. Their kind always returns to conflict." The other elders agreed. They trusted the same patterns that had guided them for centuries. In their view, life that was brief could never build lasting strength. But Lurin, the young observer, sat quietly at the edge of the council chamber. He remembered the fire in Hannah's words. He remembered the humans' refusal to kneel. Something about them unsettled him. He wanted to speak, but he had already been dismissed once. Instead, he kept his thoughts inside and watched as the council planned their next move. Back on Earth, the spark grew brighter. In schools, children drew pictures of ships that could fly beyond the stars. In farms, workers built small energy devices using new ideas shared by scientists. Musicians wrote songs about unity, and their voices reached across nations. The people of Earth were not preparing only with tools but also with spirit. In one meeting, a young student asked Arun, "Do you really believe we can face them? They are older, stronger, and wiser." Arun smiled gently. Wisdom is not only in long years. It is also in courage, in the will to try, even when the path is unclear. That is where our strength lies. We may not know all the stars, but we know ourselves. And that is enough to begin. The student felt hope, and that hope spread to others. It became clear that the envoy's greatest mistake was not their demand, but their underestimation. By trying to control, they had given humanity a reason to rise. The nights grew shorter as people worked with restless energy. Satellites were repaired faster. Networks grew stronger. Plans formed quietly in hidden rooms. Humanity was not ready for open battle, but they were ready to surprise. They were ready to learn. Above them, the silver ship continued to circle the planet. The envoys watched, waiting for orders from the council. They did not see the quiet preparations below. They did not hear the songs of unity, the voices of children, the whirring of machines in hidden workshops. They only saw mortals on a fragile world. But those mortals were no longer afraid. They were united, and unity had always been humanity's greatest spark. The silver vessel remained in Earth's orbit for several weeks. From below, it appeared as a shining star that never moved, always watching. At first, people pointed to the sky with fear, but over time, fear changed to determination. Humanity had already chosen its path. They would not bow. The Stellar Council grew impatient. The envoys had expected quick obedience, but instead they met refusal. Elder Saren, still aboard the vessel, believed it was time for a display of strength. "Mortals learn only through correction," he said. "If they see their weakness, they will finally understand." The other envoys agreed. They sent word to the council, and the order came back clear: show them power, but do not destroy. One evening, as the sun set over half the Earth, the silver vessel released waves of energy. Satellites flickered and fell silent. Screens went black. Cities that depended on those networks suddenly lost connection. For the first time in many years, the night sky grew darker. Lights went out across neighborhoods. Airplanes struggled without signals. People stood in the streets, staring upward at the unmoving star that caused it all. The envoys watched closely, certain that panic would spread. They expected to see mortals crying out for help, begging for mercy. But what they saw instead puzzled them. In the darkness, candles were lit. Generators rumbled to life. Old radios, stored away and forgotten, were pulled out and switched on. Children laughed as families gathered together under lanterns. Instead of despair, the night filled with voices, music, and quiet courage. In a city in South America, power went out across tall buildings. Yet people gathered in the central square, playing guitars and singing. In villages across Africa, fires burned bright, and stories were told under the stars. In Europe and Asia, communities worked together to restore small lights, sharing whatever they had. Far from breaking, the humans bent and then stood tall again. Arun, in his observatory, looked out over his darkened town. His students crowded around a small oil lamp as they continued to write notes and study alien signals. One of them asked, "Will this stop us?" Arun shook his head. "This will only remind us who we are. We do not stop because the night is dark. We shine because it is dark." High above, Saren frowned. "They are not afraid." Lyra leaned closer to the viewing screens. "They adapt too quickly. Their lives are short, but they waste no time. This is strange." The next morning, the silver vessel sent drones across the skies. Sleek machines with glowing wings drifted silently above cities, scanning every movement. It was meant to intimidate. But humans had already begun to prepare. A group of young pilots from different nations worked together in hidden bases. They studied the drones, noting the patterns in their flight. The machines moved in straight lines, with no variation, like perfect clockwork. One night, as the drones flew over the Pacific, small human aircraft rose to meet them. The aircraft were simple and old compared to the alien drones, but the pilots were clever. Instead of chasing directly, they created confusion with lights, fast turns, and unexpected maneuvers. The drones tried to adjust, but their rigid patterns made them predictable. One by one, several drones fell from the sky, captured or disabled by humans who refused to give up. News of this victory spread quickly across Earth. For the first time, humanity had pushed back. The envoys watched in disbelief. "They should not be able to do this," Saren muttered. "Their technology is weak." Lyra answered quietly, "Perhaps weakness is not what we think it is." In the Stellar Council Hall, the elders received the report. Some were irritated, others dismissive. "Mortals may score small wins," Elder Varen said, "but they cannot face us in the long run. Continue the pressure." Yet beneath their calm words, doubt began to stir. Back on Earth, the victory lit a new flame of unity. People cheered in streets when they heard of the captured drones. Children painted stars on walls and spoke proudly of humanity's future. Engineers hurried to study the alien machines, eager to learn their secrets. Scientists who once argued over theories now shared discoveries freely. The spark had grown into fire. Arun watched his students working with renewed energy. "You see," he said with a smile, "they tried to silence us, but instead they made us louder. They tried to darken our skies, but we found our own light. This is what it means to be mortal. We may fall, but we rise again." Above, the silver vessel remained, no longer as confident as before. The envoys could not deny what they had seen. Humanity had refused fear. Humanity had fought back. What was meant to be a lesson had become the first sign of resistance. The aliens had shown power. The mortals had answered with spirit. The war of wills had truly begun. The captured drones lay scattered across hidden workshops. Some were broken, some still hummed with faint light, but all were treasures. For the first time, humanity held alien technology in its hands. Engineers, scientists, and inventors gathered around the strange machines with wide eyes. Every wire, every glowing crystal, every strange mark was studied carefully. Arun stood with his students in a quiet laboratory. Before them lay a drone wing, smooth and silver, as if grown rather than built. A student touched it gently and whispered, "It feels alive." Arun nodded. They shaped their machines with patience. We will not copy it in centuries, but we can learn from it today. That is the gift of our short lives. We do not wait. We act. Across the world, the same work continued. In Europe, engineers discovered how the drones communicated with the vessel. In Asia, scientists cracked parts of the energy systems. In America, inventors experimented with combining alien circuits with human devices. It was like pieces of a giant puzzle being solved by millions of hands at once. At first, progress was slow. The technology was far beyond anything humans had created. But humanity had one advantage the aliens never expected: speed. Where the Stellar Council spent decades testing one idea, humans tested hundreds in a single week. Where aliens feared mistakes, humans embraced them as steps to success. Within months, Earth had built its first hybrid machines. They were not elegant, not beautiful like the silver drones, but they worked. Small aircraft carried alien crystals that powered longer flights. Radios used alien circuits to reach farther distances. Even tiny medical devices were built with strange new materials. The changes spread quickly, and people began to see hope not only in survival but in growth. The Stellar Council, watching from afar, grew uneasy. Elder Varen frowned as reports came in. They should not advance this quickly. Mortals waste their time on conflict, yet now they rise together. This is unnatural. But Lurin, the young observer, quietly spoke. It is not unnatural. It is human. They live short lives, so they do not wait for tomorrow. They make tomorrow today. The elders ignored him, but his words stayed in their minds. On Earth, unity grew stronger. Hannah stood before the gathered leaders once more. Her eyes shone with determination. They wanted to guide us as children, but we have shown that we can guide ourselves. Let us not only defend. Let us prepare to step forward. Let us show them that mortals can shape destiny too. The leaders agreed. Plans began for greater projects. Human ships were small and weak compared to alien fleets, but with hybrid systems, they could be faster and harder to predict. Small groups of pilots trained to fly in unexpected ways, turning weakness into surprise. Scientists spoke of shields that bent rather than broke, built from fragments of alien design. Arun smiled as his students worked late into the night. We have always believed time is our enemy, he said. We live short lives, and we fear the end. But perhaps that is our strength. Because time is short, we value it. Because time is short, we move with speed. That is why we adapt, and that is why they cannot understand us. The people of Earth began to believe. In the streets, children built models of starships. Artists painted murals of humans standing among the stars. Farmers used new hybrid tools to grow food faster, feeding communities with pride. Everywhere, the message was the same: humanity was no longer waiting. Humanity was moving. The envoys aboard the silver vessel felt the change. Saren looked down at Earth and felt doubt for the first time. They should have bent by now, he said. Lyra replied, perhaps bending is not in their nature. Perhaps we made an error. Saren shook his head. They are still mortals. They cannot match us. But even as he spoke, his voice lacked certainty. The turning point had come quietly. It was not a great battle, not a sudden event. It was the steady rise of human spirit, the quick hands of inventors, the unity of leaders, the songs of children, the courage of workers. The council had tried to dim their light, but instead, humanity burned brighter than ever before. And far beyond Earth, whispers began to travel among other alien worlds. Some species watched the small blue planet with new respect. Others, long silent under council rule, felt courage awaken. If mortals could stand, perhaps they too could rise. The Stellar Council had wanted obedience. What they had created instead was inspiration. The war had not yet reached its peak, but the path was clear. Mortals had taken their first step toward the stars not with fear, but with unshakable will. The Council did not know it yet, but the balance of power was beginning to shift. The Stellar Council could no longer ignore the reports. Human progress was faster than expected, and whispers spread through the galaxy. Species that had once obeyed the Council quietly asked questions. If mortals of Earth could resist, then perhaps the Council was not as invincible as it claimed. Elder Varen stood in the center of the Council Hall, his voice calm but firm. This cannot continue. Mortals must be reminded of their place. They have grown bold, and boldness spreads like fire. We will send fleets to Earth. We will crush this spark before it becomes a blaze. The vote was swift. Ships were ordered. The Stellar Council prepared for open war. Above Earth, the silver vessel received its new command. Envoy Saren allowed himself a small smile. At last, the Council understands. Soon the mortals will see the weight of true power. Lyra, however, remained silent. She had seen too much to be certain. Power does not always win, she whispered, though no one heard her. The first fleets appeared in the skies weeks later. From the surface, people saw dark shapes blot out the stars. Great vessels moved with silent grace, each larger than cities. The sight was enough to shake even the bravest hearts. Yet humanity did not falter. By now, hybrid ships of Earth were ready. They were smaller, rough in design, and lacked the beauty of alien craft, but they had something the fleets did not: unpredictability. Human pilots had trained with strange maneuvers, sudden turns, and daring risks. The envoys and their council masters had never faced such movements before. The first clash came above the Atlantic Ocean. Alien ships released their drones in perfect formation, each moving like part of a single mind. In response, human fighters rose in scattered groups. At first, it looked chaotic, but soon patterns emerged, patterns no machine could predict. They swirled, broke apart, reformed, and struck from angles that seemed impossible. From the ground, millions watched as bright trails lit the sky. The news spread within minutes: humans were not running. Humans were fighting. In a hidden control center, Hannah stood before large screens, guiding the defense. Remember, she told the pilots, we cannot outmatch their strength. We can only outthink it. Trust your instincts. Trust each other. The battle was fierce, but slowly, the humans pushed back. A captured drone had been rebuilt into a beacon that disrupted alien signals. Suddenly, formations broke. Drones hesitated. Human ships darted through the gaps, striking with precision. The first alien vessel faltered, and cheers rose across Earth. The envoys watched in disbelief. Saren gripped the edge of his chair. How do they do this? They should not be able to resist. Lyra finally spoke. They do not follow patterns. They do not fear mistakes. That is why we cannot predict them. On the surface, communities worked as one. Engineers repaired damaged ships quickly. Families prepared supplies for those defending the skies. Children drew pictures of hybrid ships with bright colors, filling their homes with hope. Even in the darkest moments, humanity did not surrender. The Stellar Council grew frustrated. Their fleets were vast, yet progress was slow. Reports told of humans striking in ways no one expected. Ships appeared from hidden valleys, deserts, and oceans, always with new tricks. Mortals were not breaking. They were teaching the galaxy what it meant to fight with heart. Arun, standing on the rooftop of his observatory, watched the trails of fire across the stars. His students gathered beside him, their faces glowing with determination. Look at them, he said softly. Every pilot knows their life is short. Yet they fly as if it is endless. That is the gift of mortals. We live with urgency. We live with passion. That is what makes us strong. Far beyond Earth, other species listened closely. Messages traveled in secret channels. The mortals resist, they said. The mortals rise. Some who had bowed to the council for centuries began to wonder if they, too, could stand tall. Back in the stellar council hall, unease filled the air. Elder Saren's reports no longer promised quick victory. Instead, they spoke of confusion, delays, and unexpected defeats. The elders exchanged uncertain glances. They are only mortals, Varen insisted, but his voice lacked its old certainty. The war was not decided yet, but something greater had changed. The galaxy had seen the courage of humanity. Earth had stood against fleets, not with power, but with unity, creativity, and unshakable will. The mortals of Earth had turned survival into defiance, and defiance into hope. The all-out war had begun, but the outcome was no longer certain. The skies of Earth no longer belonged only to the Stellar Council. Human ships now flew side by side with the alien fleets, darting, weaving, and striking in ways the Council could not predict. Across the world, people looked upward not with fear, but with determination. The all-out war was no longer a one-sided struggle. It was a contest of wills. Elder Varen sat in the council hall, his voice heavy with frustration. This world should have been silenced quickly. Instead, their defiance grows louder. Every victory we claim is small, every loss spreads across the stars. Already, other species whisper. This cannot continue. Another elder spoke, her tone uneasy. Perhaps we have underestimated them. Mortals are not as fragile as we believed. But Varen refused to bend. They are only mortals. They cannot match the wisdom of centuries. In the shadows of the chamber, Lurin, the young observer, stepped forward. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of truth. Elders, you speak of centuries, but perhaps that is the problem. We have lived so long that we move slowly, bound by our own order. Mortals live for only a short time, but in that short time, they burn brighter than we ever dared. That is their strength. The elders fell silent. None wished to admit it, but they could not deny what was happening. On Earth, the war continued. Human engineers pushed forward with new hybrid designs. Small ships were rebuilt with alien energy cores, giving them speed that stunned even experienced alien pilots. Shields crafted from alien fragments bent and flexed, protecting human fighters against attacks that should have destroyed them. Every day, humans learned something new, and every day, they grew stronger. In one battle above the deserts of Africa, a squad of human pilots faced a fleet 3 times their size. The council commanders expected an easy victory. Instead, the humans scattered, vanished into the clouds, and reappeared from impossible angles. Their movements seemed wild, but behind the chaos was a plan. By the time the dust cleared, the larger fleet had been forced to retreat. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. Species that had once lived quietly under council rule now felt their hearts stir. If mortals can resist, they whispered, then perhaps we can too. Inside his observatory, Arun watched as his students tracked each battle on glowing screens. His voice trembled with pride. They wanted us to fear our mortality. But it is our mortality that gives us courage. We know every moment is precious. That is why we fight, that is why we endure. In the skies above, the envoys finally faced the truth. Saren, once so certain of human weakness, now spoke with doubt. We thought their short lives made them weak. Yet it is because of their short lives that they are strong. They do not waste centuries waiting. They act now. They risk everything, because to them, everything is already fleeting. Lyra nodded quietly. Perhaps the council has forgotten what it means to live with urgency. Perhaps these mortals are here to remind us. The final turning point came when humanity pushed the fleets back from orbit. It was not done through raw power, for the alien fleets were still larger and stronger. It was done through surprise, through courage, and through unity. The fleets expected surrender, but instead they met mortals who refused to kneel. At last, the Stellar Council could not ignore the truth. To continue the war would not only risk defeat, but also the loyalty of countless other species. Reluctantly, the elders agreed to withdraw. The envoys delivered the message themselves. Before the leaders of Earth, Saren bowed his head slightly. His voice carried both respect and humility. Mortals of Earth, the Council recognizes your will. We came expecting obedience, but we found something greater. You have taught us that short life is not weakness. It is strength. You live with urgency. You live with fire. And in that fire, you stand unbroken. Hannah stepped forward, her expression calm but proud. We do not seek to rule the stars. We only ask to stand among them as equals. If others wish to share knowledge, we will share. But we will not surrender what makes us human. The envoy nodded. Then let it be so. The galaxy will remember the lesson of mortals. As the silver vessel rose once more into the sky, the people of Earth stood together in silence. They had not conquered the council, but they had done something far greater. They had proven themselves. They had shown that even the smallest world, even the briefest lives, could shine bright enough to change the stars. In the observatory, Arun looked at the night sky. His students stood beside him, their faces full of wonder. This is only the beginning, he said softly. We were once a small voice on a small planet. Now, the galaxy listens. Let us speak not with fear, but with courage. The world was quiet, but within that quiet was hope. Humanity had faced the greatest challenge in its history and emerged stronger. The Stellar Council had learned its lesson, mortals could not be bent so easily. The story of Earth had only begun, but already, the stars no longer looked the same.